Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again on another episode of our Silver Linings, Finding Hope Through Faith amidst the COVID crisis. Today, we are actually going to be talking about a religion that I'm very excited to talk about because I think there are people who may not be familiar with this religion, and that's one of our main goals per the Interfaith Council is to, really shed light on faith traditions that people practice all over the world and gain a deeper understanding. So today we're actually going to be talking about the Jain faith tradition. And I have with me Dr. Nitin Shah, who is joining me from the Jain community in our local area. And so Dr. Shah, I wanted to ask you to, first of all, thank you so much for being part of this program. We really appreciate you being with us. I know you're terribly busy, and this morning I think you were out delivering groceries to people. So I think that probably speaks a lot about who you are and your faith tradition. So I appreciate the time that you've given to us. So to kind of begin with, Dr. Shah, I'd love to know a little bit about yourself, just so our audience members and me can get to know you a little bit better. So what should we know about you?
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. And this reminds me of 9/11. Because I happened to be the president of Jain Center of Southern California following that in 2002 and 3, and had been to many places and spoken to many interfaith groups, given lectures and all that. At that time, of course, it was all live and not on Zoom, but that's pretty much the situation is similar. Probably, I would say even worse because we still don't see an end in sight. In terms of myself, Milia, I put people to sleep.
Oh dear.
Wake them up and then send them my bill. I'm an anesthesiologist and an intensivist. Means that I take care of patients in ICU along with giving anesthesia for surgeries. And I'm professor at Loma Linda University and as a staff anesthesiologist and intensivist at Long Beach Veterans Hospital.
Okay.
And what brings me here is probably past president of Jain Center of Southern California, chair of the Interfaith Committee of Jain Center of Southern California, and a member of Interfaith Committee of Jaina. And Jaina is our national umbrella organization, which hosts or which is kind of inclusive of 72 centers in North America, which includes US and Canada. And Jaina stands for Federation of Jain Associations in North America.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Dr. Shah, one of the first questions that I've always kind of asked our guests is just to kind of give their perspective about what's happening in regards to the pandemic. And I think you probably bring one of the most unique perspectives as someone who probably has much more of a firsthand account. But just, maybe the medical field did foresee this, but I know for most of us, we never imagined 2020 to be the way that it's been, certainly with this pandemic. So just what are some of your reflections that, that you found as you are dealing with this pandemic right now?
Neither did I, nor did medical profession expected 20 to be what it has turned out to be. I actually came back from mission in January and from India and did not know that I will not be able to travel for a long time. And I do missions in different parts of the world and all those will be on hold. Having had the pandemic, if I tell you from perspective of my own hospital, we really prepared ourselves very well to cater for more than 2.5 times number of beds, etc., especially from an intensive care perspective, which is my forte. We haven't had need to go that far yet. And we dropped down significantly. If I tell you the numbers, our highest was 23 patients, not in ICU total. And we dropped down to 3. Now, on Friday, we were back up to 21. So we are seeing a second surge and we're all scrambling. To me personally, that's not unexpected. because lockdown can only help so far. The moment you open up, things will happen, things will improve. I mean, we will get worse for two reasons. One is, of course, that patients are mingling and not social distancing as well. Second reason is we are testing more and more people. So the moment we test more people, we are expected to have more positives.
Mm. So, you were talking about the mission trips that you take, and I wonder if that has something to do with your faith tradition. And so you are a Jain. And so what I would love is, I suspect many of our viewers may not be that familiar with the Jain faith tradition. So I would love for you to give us kind of a Jain 101, a basic understanding of what the faith tradition and what it means to you.
Yes, I think that is a good point to start with. If you go in our scriptures, we believe that Jain faith is eternal. There is no beginning, there is no end. We also don't believe in any superpower. We believe that it has been in existence for millions of years. However, Lord Mahavir Swami, we call them as 24th Tirthankar. And Tirthankars are people who liberated themselves from the cycle of birth and death and achieved nirvana. So he was the 24th known in this particular era. Era means each era has thousands of years in it. So he was around about 2,600 years ago. And the Jain, and he kind of propounded the Jain religion, which was not getting extinct, but reducing in influence. And he brought it out in the world again, 2,600 years ago. And the word Jain comes from Jina, Jina. And Jina means someone who has conquered inner enemies like ego, greed, deceit, etc. And there is no beginning and end of universe. It runs on Samaya world, group of 5 causes. And they are time, inherent nature, which is our swabhav, destiny, which is predestined, based on karma, is the next one, our karma, and the self-effort. I mean, our karma is important, but also how we deal with it. And I'll give you a beautiful quote that I love about attitude. It's only 1% that is what happens to us. But the other 99% is how we react. If any human being says, or any living being says that the good and bad things don't happen, I'm afraid I wouldn't agree. Based on our karma, good and bad things are going to happen. But it is how we react to it, how we deal with it. That is what is significant. So each living being has a soul, and the soul is bound with karma. And the goal is to liberate themselves from that. There are 3 main principles that I will lead to. Ahimsa, which is non-violence, commonly known. Anikan means multiplicity of viewpoints, means that there is no single truth. There are multiple truths. And the classic example people give is, take blind men, say 12, 13 of blind men to a large elephant and ask them to touch, and they will describe them in different ways depending upon what they are touching.
Right.
And the third one is aparigraha, means non-possessiveness. And that's so applicable in the present situation where there is so much need all around the world because of the situation that's happening in the crisis. And we believe in giving, and how much you can give. Truth, non-stealing, celibacy, and compassion to all living beings are other important practices. And Jain religion's prescription for liberation is right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct. And our goal is to liberate ourselves from the thing. And the most peace-living religion in the world is Jain religion, as we believe, because all religions preach non-violence, but Jains take it to kind of next level, where we don't believe in hurting any living being, not only just human beings, animals, birds, but any living being. And based on that, our doctrine and practices are coming. And finally, Lord Mahavir had said, Parasparo Groho Jivana means we are all interdependent. So please help each other in life. And he said, I quote, one who neglects or disregards the existence of earth, air, fire, water, and vegetation, disregards his own existence, which is entwined with them. And I'll stop.
So, Dr. Shah, in terms of, daily, are there any, amidst this COVID pandemic, some of the things that we've encountered from different faith traditions is, for example, as Muslims, we go to the mosque to pray, but our mosques are closed, right? We can still pray at home, but our Friday services are obviously hindered and things like that. So I'm wondering, in terms of the practice of your faith tradition, has it been impacted, in a negative way or perhaps a positive way from this pandemic that we're facing?
As you put it, positive as well as negative. Let's talk about negative and put it out of the way, right?
Sounds good.
We have a beautiful 75,000 square feet plus temple located in Muna Park, and I invite you and the South Coast Interfaith Council to come and attend when we possibly can. Yes, we have been pretty busy community. Every other Sunday between September through June, we have what's called Parshala, which is a religious class. And on those Sundays, we used to get 1,000 plus people. Wow. So imagine the disappointment in people. And I'm not even talking about every morning and every evening and all that, because typically we have two sets of rituals. One happens in the morning and another happens in the evening. And there are many people who come, of course, I mean, anywhere from 5, 10 to 50, 100, but every other Sundays. And all these people, we are kind of disappointed that we can't do that because we have to respect the coronavirus and the regulations. However, the positives are, this has brought us together in terms of exploring how and what else can we do. And Zoom and other WebEx and other media have been phenomenal. And the good thing is, now we can do it sitting at our home and we can engage the community all over the world.
Right.
So there are people from India doing the things, lectures, as well as singing and pravachans and things like that. And we all can watch it from different parts of the world. I'll give you two examples. I am a kind of vice chair of Academic Liaison Committee of Jain, and under which we have connected with several universities in Southern California alone and other parts of the world for academic Jain education. And we did two Zoom meetings of celebration. One, endowed chair at University of California, Santa Barbara, and second, fellowship at UC Riverside. And both of them were Zoom celebrations. And guess what? We had people from India, US, and Canada, which would never have happened otherwise. Right. So there are goods and bads.
Right. So you were talking, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, one other thing in the same breath, what I'm learning, or we all are, that how people cope with this. Of course, the administrators are trying to figure out. Right now, our temple in general is closed, but we do allow people in a batch of 4 or 5 people between 9 and 12 on Sundays. And every evening for the ceremony that we do, people can sign up a month ago, up to a month ago, and then come and be there to do that ritual. So it is certainly challenging, and yet we are all trying to cope with this. And if I may give you a personal example, I was amazed how my grandson, who is 10, has coped with this and understood the social distancing, masking, and when to touch, not to touch. They live in San Francisco and they are visiting in LA area, not with us, but with our in-laws. And we visit, but we have to maintain the physical distancing. We can't be close to them and things like that. So I'm very proud that the children are learning and practicing this in the right way.
Well, I'm sure they probably have great examples in their elders to follow. I'm sure that plays a part as well. So you were talking about the rituals, Dr. Shah. I would love to, can you, for those of us who aren't as familiar with these rituals, can you explain what the ritual is so we have a kind of a deeper understanding?
Yes, Jains believe in, let me rephrase, like most religions, we have few subsects.
Okay.
And we do certain subsects believe in ritual of doing some processes on idols. And we have 7 idols in the main altar in Vina Park Temple. And then there are many others. But for those 7 idols, what we call it is a process called Anjan Salaka, means that the Acharya Bhagwans in India, the priest, put in life into those idols and then we brought them here. But the binding with that is that in 24 hours, at least once, something must happen, some rituals. And yeah, so that is in the morning. And we have, luckily, 2 caretakers come priests who reside in the premises. And they have been doing that. Normally, there are quite a few people who go there every single day, but under the circumstances, they can't. And similarly, we have a process in the evening where, of course, the administrators have kept it open for community members to sign up, 1 family at a time. But otherwise, these are the rituals which we have to do. And, you know, this crisis has really put us and brought out kind of very creative thinking. And I'll give you another example, not necessarily from here, but from India. And that actually applied to my mother, who lived with me for 20 years in America. Yeah, she was with me for 20 years and passed away 9 years ago. But, you know, my aunt was still there in India. They will not take either water or food in the morning until they go and do rituals to the idols. In India. And now we can't do that because we can't go out, temples are probably closed. So the modification that my cousins and have done is they brought an idol in the house so that my aunts can go and do that. So they still can maintain their practices, and yet it is not, we're not violating the laws and the requirements.
I see. Now, you said there are 2 priests that are in the center who does this. So that brings me to my next question as we're talking, in terms of, are those priests considered like the clergy of the Jain faith? Are they kind of the spiritual leaders, or is it where there is no spiritual leader, it's each on its own? How is that?
I'll give you a little long answer.
Okay.
Jains divisions are that there are monks, male and female. We call them sadhu for male and sadhvi for female. And then there are householders like us. We call them Sravak for male, Sravika for female. And what we have in the temple, one is a priest equivalent, but he is mainly to help and follow the rituals on the idols that we need to do and many other religious activities. But he's not a spiritual person who will give us sermons and lectures and things like that. No. The second person is actually a caretaker, but he's so kind and nice that along with taking care of the property, he also helps with the rituals. Being a Jain, he understands and all. So that's how those 2 individuals are. I would say, unfortunately, Jain religion, when started and even today, is so restrictive that our monks are not allowed by religious requirements to travel utilizing any means. Means they can only walk. So that's the reason why many monks have not been able to come. Yes, there are exceptions. Even currently, in the past, there are people who have broken that vow and come out to spread Jain religion in North America and Africa and other parts of the world. But obviously, they are not considered practicing the same level of vows that a Jain monk is supposed to do back in India.
Oh, wow. So if I understand correctly, so basically no means of transportation except one's legs.
Walking.
Wow, very interesting. So you were you referenced India, and so I wanted to know, and then you said that in America there's about 70 Jain centers all throughout America. So can you tell us a little bit about the population of Jains throughout the world? Where are they historically? Where are they now?
There are 4 to 5 million
Mm.
Jains all over the world,
Okay.
and most of them reside in India, but they've traveled in almost all major countries in the world. You will find a Jain.
Okay.
Coming to North America, especially United States, we are about 150,000 Jains, and we have 72 Jain organizations which are under the umbrella of Jaina. However, they all function independently, but it's not like Jaina says and everybody needs to do that. No, we allow everybody to work independently, but still there is an umbrella organization. We have conventions that happen every other year, etc., under Jaina. Okay. So that is the number. In Southern California, I would say about 1,200 families, so 5,000 people, plus minus.
Okay. And has this population been something well, I guess right now there's so many restrictions with travel, but do you see the population rising in America of Jains?
Slowly.
Okay.
Slowly but surely, in a small increments, yes.
Okay.
If I give you an example, in 2001, I know this precisely, there were 604 or so families in Southern California. Now, these numbers are officially what we have recorded in our roster. Mm-hmm. There will be more, obviously, those who are not members, etc. Mm-hmm. And now the last number that I remember was about close to 1,000. Okay. So that's the growth of Jain families. Now, it could be because of new migration, or also because there are people living here who had not been a member and now they became member, but that's the number.
Okay. You know, one of the things we always get questions about from kind of our constituency and audience members is, can someone convert to the Jain faith? And what does that mean, or how is that done? Is that something that's a possibility, or?
This is a very beautiful question. Thank you, Milia, for asking. And I will give you my personal view, not necessarily reflecting anything, but I'm sure most Jains would probably agree with me, but Jains do not believe in converting. Mm-hmm. So we don't go out and say, you become Jain or not. That's one side. The other side, we believe that every living being, every soul is a Jain, including yourself. So this is our belief that we all live and die based on our karma, and goal of every living being should be to liberate ourselves from the cycle of birth and death. But there is no specific doctrine that you can do so that now you can be called as Jain. No, so there are many who are born in, I shouldn't say many, but there are who are born Jains, but not following rituals or practices to that extent. And there are people who are not born Jains, but they are much more Jains in terms of practices than a Jain.
True. I think that's probably true in all of our faith traditions, isn't it? That's very true. Yes. So early, in the beginning of our conversation, Dr. Shah, you talked about, I believe there were 7 precepts that you talked about. Can you remind us of those? It included service to the community and some other things that are kind of the core.
Compassion, yes.
Yes. And what were they again?
But three main ones are, we call it triple A's. Ahimsa, or non-violence, Anikan, or multiplicity of views, and aparigraha as non-possessiveness. Okay. And then to follow that, truth, non-stealing, celibacy, and compassion.
Compassion, okay.
Compassion means go and help another living being.
Okay, so I wanted to focus on that for a little bit. You know, I'm sure service is one of the greatest acts of compassion, right? Because obviously you're physically, helping another entity. And you being a physician, I think you're still able to do that, most certainly during this pandemic. We need you more than anyone probably. But for other Jains, how has this pandemic kind of affected that aspect of service to other people? Because they're, right now we have the, although I guess the mandate isn't necessarily to stay at home, but certainly not to be out and about, just to be out and about. But how has that impacted people in the Jain faith, or are they finding, like you said, creative ways to still do that?
You absolutely are right. Jains in general have believed in giving and taking care of others, underprivileged or unfortunate people.
Mm-hmm.
And when the pandemic started, I will just first talk about Jain Center of Southern California.
Sure.
What we did is we started raising funds to help people. Now, we extend our help not only to people here, but also to Jains and others in India.
Mm-hmm.
And not only to human beings, but even to animals and birds.
Mm-hmm.
We have what is called Jeev Daya, means taking care of animals who are suffering in India. We believe in doing that years after years. We've been doing it. So we did that part. Then, under the circumstances, we realized that people here are suffering. So, about 12 weeks ago, we started giving free groceries to needy people in our temple. And our average starting was, of course, 140, 150 families. But the last one that we did just last Sunday, we had given food, groceries to 320 families.
Wow.
And then we also gave money to a food bank to prepare the whole container to be distributed to needy families. That was in Long Beach, Second Harvest. Then we also realized, and now this is not under Jain Center of Southern California, even though they participated, but we have another organization called Anikan Community Center. And that comes from the Anikan was the word. And we have registered that as a non-religious organization for humanitarian activities around the world. And we do many activities that we won't go into details, but we started a project called Chromebooks for underprivileged children. Oh. What we realize is that under the circumstances, many children cannot study because everything is online. And there are people who have maybe one computer, maybe zero, and there may be one child, there may be 4 children, 3 children. So we started approaching schools, and we gave 500 Chromebooks to 4 schools within a matter of few weeks.
Wow.
And we have a trust, again, a Jain businessman, Manu and Rika Shah, whose company is MS International, and their trust is called Sarva Mangal Family Trust. Sarva Mangal means let all be happy. And they have opened as many as we can give, they will help donating funds. Wow. And Anikan Community Center raised funds for certain amounts. I won't go into the description of how that has worked, but we then went to Jaina and said, we will support any organization nationwide and Canada. And guess what? Out of 72 organizations, 18 organizations have taken challenge. We want them to raise funds for 60%, and other 40% we will support. And they will give these Chromebooks, 50 will be about, to their school of choice. Wow. And that option now we have opened up to anybody. So including you, including South Coast Interfaith Council, anybody, what they have to do is they have to raise funds for 60% of the money. In terms of dollars, it comes to 3,750. And we will add another 2,500 from Anikan Community Center and Sarva Mangal Family Trust and give at least 50. Our goal is to go over 5,000 Chromebooks anywhere in US and Canada.
Wow, that's amazing.
So then I personally have gotten involved with giving groceries at two other places. One is a church in Artesia City, New Life Church, who have been giving groceries every Saturday for past 12 years.
Oh,
And I
wow.
came to know about just about when the COVID started and lockdown was, and I was wondering, what am I going to do sitting at home except for work? Of course, I'm fortunate that I had to be at work all the day, all the days.
Except
So,
saving people's
but
lives. What else can you do, Dr. Shah? Yes, just,
oh, you can put down my email and number. I can find work for anybody. And while you mentioned that me being a physician, obviously a little bit easy to help people, but no, all you need is a desire to help. And I'm not going to go into that today, but I've got so many examples of people with money, people with desire just to help.
Right.
And they've been able to do something to that nature. So this morning, because of our timing and because of my hospital need, I actually could not go to give groceries, but I just got the message from a family who decided to do this just 2 days ago. And they said they're going to take 3 or 4 people. So I said, okay, I can take a break. But so that's one place. Second place, we have another foundation, a non-Jain, the Sadia Foundation by Mr. B.U. Patel and his family. They have said, whatever money you need, they have a temple that they manage, Sanatan Dharma Temple in Norwalk. And we have started giving groceries for 9 weeks now. And 4 weeks ago, we started cooking meals every Sunday.
Oh, wow.
So we have distributed 1,200 to 1,500 meals every Sunday for last 4 weeks. And that's where I will be tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
We give groceries to about 350 to 400 families every Sunday and give food to people who come there. So if a family member, if a car comes with to pick up grocery and we ask how many people in the family, they say 4. We give them 4 lunches for that particular day.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
So there are little things and big things we are all trying and doing to help people. Compassion in action.
Right.
Anukampa, that's what we call it. That's a very huge belief and principle within Jain faith.
So, I want to ask you, going kind of one of the unique things that Muslims had to face this year is we had the month of Ramadan, the month of fasting, but we couldn't go to the mosque. So it was really one of the first times, most certainly in my lifetime, where we were just within the confinements of our immediate home, doing this holiday in our faith. Are there holidays like that in the Jain faith, and have they fallen within the parameters of the pandemic thus far, and how was that encountered, and how did people celebrate?
You got the right questions, don't you, Milia? Obviously, you've been doing it for a while, but this is a very, very important issue for us as Jains. Mm-hmm. We have 8 days that a subset called Swatambar practices, and then 10 days a subset called Digambar practices. Mm-hmm. And they are coming up right next month.
Oh, wow.
And we have started talking about what we are going to do. Certainly, I'm not any committee, so the executive committee and board of directors will decide, but I play a small part, and that's why I know the details. And I will tell you what I have proposed them to do. Sure. See, what we call last day of those 8 days is called Samvatsari. And that is a day of repentance, day of forgiveness. We ask forgiveness for whatever we have done wrong during the year, and we, of course, give forgiveness to people also. And it is amazing. We will have probably 12 to 1,500 people on that day in the temple. Oh, wow. And now, we probably don't think we are going to be able to. August 22nd is that day, and then the other day comes 10 days later, which is a smaller subset. But on August 22nd last year, we would have 13, or we probably had 1,400 people. Wow. So now, how are you going to handle it? So one of the ritual that we have, as we call it, Samvatsari Pratikaman, I have been conducting for youth and adults in English.
Mm.
And on an average, we started with a small group of 70, 80 people, and now it has reached close to 180 to 200.
Oh, nice.
So even if we get the temple with the requirement of only 100 people in there, and then obviously there's need of another 1,200 people right there. So what I have proposed is I will do the whole event on Zoom.
Ah, okay.
So we will do the English version that I've been conducting in Jain Center of Southern California annually since 2001 on site. I propose that I will do on Zoom.
Okay.
So will it work? Not, I don't know.
Okay.
But unless you try, it will not be. And together, 1,500 people in any which way, we are even exploring getting a convention center because this is such an important and sacred day for Jain faith. But still, I've taken us out of that calculations just because of no place that we can possibly find. And how do I gather 200 up to 200 people with social distancing, mask, and all that? So I'm almost certain that they will accept and they will let me do on Zoom. And we do have capacity to go up to 200. And see, the good thing in this is there are about 80 to 90 different paragraphs that people read. And the way I have been doing it is I engage child anywhere from 5 years to adult to read each session, each lesson rather. So that they stay engaged with us. You see, and it's all in English, in simple language, anybody can understand. So my challenge will be, how will I be able to do that online? But we will take that challenge and figure out. Everything is available, not online, but via email. So they will all have all the lessons, and we will figure out about how will they interact to do this. But it is a huge challenge. And then there is Mahavir Jayanti, means Lord Mahavir's Janma celebration, birth celebration. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to exactly do that. And it's also a big fundraiser for the temple. See, that's another challenge, that people are not coming there and all. And of course, the executive committee led by Dr. Jain Shah have approached community members and asked for donations and things. And I'm sure that will certainly help and work. But there are multiple challenges with especially large facilities that we have.
Well, I would love for you to let me know. I would love to know how it turns out, because that's true. These are, I studied religion as my graduate studies, and what I always found fascinating is how people adapt their faith traditions to the circumstances that we face. And it's really interesting. And this is certainly, like I said, in most of our lifetimes, this is the first pandemic that we face. It's interesting to see how faith traditions navigate that. Dr. Shah, you brought up the youth, and the youth is obviously, per the Interfaith Council, one of the sectors of the population that we really try to engage with are the youth, because you kind of have, in regards to religion overall in America, you kind of have two groups of the youth. There's the youth who, I don't need religion, I don't need faith, it causes more harm than help, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm more spiritual than I am religious, things like that. And then you also surprisingly have another sector who are actually quite devout. They go to the Shabbat the Shabbat services in the temples. They go to the Friday Jummah prayers. They go to get the Eucharist at the churches. So I wondered, within the Jain community, how is it difficult for the Jain youth to hold on to their faith, or what are their perceptions of being a practicing Jain, which is certainly a minority within their groups in America?
Very interesting question. And our struggle is no less than what you described. Before I describe more, I would like to bring out that we have American-born Jains and Jains youth who have migrated from India. So they grew up in India with some background, And there is a distinct difference that at least our community is finding,
Mm-hmm.
that the engagement level is different in different aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And if I summarize, the Indian-born Jains are more likely to stay on a ritualistic side because that's what they grew up with, that's what I grew up with.
Right.
While American-born Jains are more likely to stay on the basis of following principles. And simple example is being a vegetarian, or even stretching it to being a vegan vegetarian. While the Indian-born Jains are more likely to follow practices which have been doctrined and said for years and years that even I grew up with. And then, we do have an advantage that we have in our Pathshala that I mentioned, 450 plus children. So they are coming, and that age ranges from 4 or 5 years going up to high school or seniors in high school. So they have several years of engagement in Pathshala to learn about religion. Of course, when they go out, what will be their practice? I will just give you an example of my own son. He is now 39, and he went through the Pathshala like all other children. And if I talk to him about rituals, and he was, by the way, born in Zambia, Africa, where I was. Okay. And then he came when he was 6 years of age. So obviously doesn't remember much of Zambia. But his viewpoint is he believes in practicing Jain principles more than being ritualistic and going to the temple and things like that. And I have a feeling that many who are American-born, or let's put it, not India-born raised youth will be of that type. I mean, there are always exceptions and varieties, of course. But it's a challenge that we are facing. And yet we believe that the opportunity that we are offering in various universities now will probably change that, not necessarily for the Jains of Indian origin, but even otherwise. And I'll give you one example. One of our earlier professors was at Loyola Marymount University. And we had a professor who was teaching 50% Jain, 50% Sikh. And within 2 months, September through November, the professor called me and said that 4 Americans have turned vegetarian after learning about Jain religion.
Wow.
So,
yeah. Well, so it's interesting you bring that. It's interesting you bring that up because when I was looking for someone to speak with from the Jain community, your name came up in multiple facets. And one of the individuals was Whitney, who was at Claremont, and she was the director of the Jain Center there. So it's interesting how you're right. I'm sure that probably does play a significant role because it exposes people to what the Jain faith is. So that's commendable that you are doing that. Dr. Shah, we have a little bit of time left, and there's 2 things I wanted to just focus on before we go. So this aspect of nonviolence, that's something that's very, unfortunately, in today's age, it seems like it's very unique, because we see violence all around us in various manifestations. And, obviously, I think, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the current kind of the environment in terms of the protests and the calling out for justice and things like that. So from a Jain's perspective, I mean, how is that perceived? I mean, many, obviously in terms of if we look at, the civil rights movement, Dr. King had a huge part in that, and he was all about nonviolence. All his actions were nonviolence. So I wonder in terms of a practicing Jain, how do you perceive what's happening, and, what insights maybe can you offer from your faith tradition to kind of help the current climate, the political, the socioeconomic climate that we're all in?
Thank you for the key question, if I may say, about how Jain faith and Jain beliefs help in this. And as I said before, that it is Samaivar, and there are things which are going to happen. This was destined because of karmas of people in the world. And Jains believe that we are in a downslope of our cycle of thousands of years. And during that time, we are going to have this type of calamities and crisis. And how do we deal with this? I mean, it's a matter of, can we avoid the, what we call it as a limit or something which is a catalyst. And in this particular case, follow the guidelines recommended by CDC and government and try and avoid that, which, as I said before, my grandson is teaching us more than anybody else, a 10-year-old. And then, as we said, it is the efforts of individual soul that is going to make a difference in this. And how do we as Jains accept to live with this is that we are all living our life based on predetermined karma. The karmas that we have done in past life, this is the uprising of those bad karmas. And obviously, under the crisis, different people are affected in different ways. Right. So that is what is based on individuals' karma. I mean, I've read stories about 88 and 90 years old acquiring COVID, going to the hospital and still coming back. Right. And of course, we know that some youths did not make it out. So it's all based on the karma and our actions. We certainly should be particular about doing our actions. Then I like to give one story about 600 years ago. There was an outbreak of plague in Taxila, Bihar, which is in northern India. And people approached a Jain Acharya. Acharya is the highest level of monkhood. And his name is Acharya Mandev Suri, and asked him to come there to help. He was in Rajasthan. Now, he could not go there, but what he did is, he did some mantras, means some slokas and some things on water. And what he preached and said is called Lagu Santi. And then he said, take this water and apply or sprinkle onto people who have acquired the disease. And it seemed that it helped in the long run with the particular disease. And in the same fashion, there are certain slokas in our main prayer. If you allow me, I would like to recite that and the meaning right when we are reaching to the end. And that is the center of our strength as Jains, that we recite those mantras and that will help. And still, reciting something doesn't mean you can get rid of your karma. You still have to get rid of those karmas in this life, but it helps to ease your mind, and penance and other austerities and things like that. Jains are pretty big in that. Incidentally, today it is Chomasi Chaudas, which is the biggest 14th day that happens every 30-day cycle today. And there are many people who do fast and eat one time and things like that. And in the evening, a few people will get together in the temple to do pratikaman, which is the evening rituals. So it is so those type of practices help us to cope with the crisis that is happening.
So before I ask you to do your prayer, which is a wonderful way to actually end, absolutely, because we are reaching the end of our time, but I wanted to just invite you before we end, just to share anything else that you might want to about the Jain faith, about what's going on, just about anything that you think will, the whole premises of this program is we try to show that people of faith, they're finding hope in their faith amidst kind of a time that's quite challenging. So if there's anything that you'd like to share that can kind of allow our audience members to also feel a sense of hope, if they're going through a difficult time, which many of us are with this pandemic, just, anything that you feel that might be of help to them.
Yes, as I've said about the beliefs of Jains, also many other religions including Buddha, says that you need to be in control of yourself. You are determining your own destiny. Mm. This has come, which is not your fault, except that all living beings, bad karmas combined, has brought this. So while you cannot change what is there, but you can certainly make efforts to change how you react to that, as we talked before. And the message is not necessarily just from Jain faith, but in general, be calm, don't be fearful. This too shall pass. Nobody has full control of the disease yet. Eventually, remember, in 1918, there was an influenza outbreak, and there was an epidemic and pandemic, and we all survived out of that. Of course, most of us were not born at that time, but human race did survive. And same thing will happen out of this too. So it's important to be respectful of whatever are the requirements, whatever are the recommendations from the medical profession and the rules that the government makes. Not necessarily they are always right or wrong, but it's a matter of practicing safety, social distancing, not getting together, and using mask and washing your hands, etc. And believing in yourself that if you find a way to pray and meditate during this time along with your work, this too shall pass.
That's a beautiful way to end this. I would love for you to share the prayer and as we conclude today's program. And
thank you very much for this opportunity. I will say the most important prayer in the Prakrit language first, and then I will give the meaning, and then there is one other thing I would like to do the same way.
Sure.
Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Lo Esauva Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro, Sauva Pava Panasano, Manglanancham Savvesim, Padamam Havai Mangalam. For the benefit of everybody, I'm going to go from kind of bottom up, not necessarily the best way, but I think the non-Jains will understand it better. That's my personal belief. And if I'm disrespecting, I apologize. For the apologies, we say Bichami Dukram. That's a Jain way of asking for forgiveness. And our greeting is Jai Jinendra. That's how we greet people. It's just like Salam Alaikum for the right. Navkar mantra is the most important mantra in Jain religion. It is based on Jain belief of existence of soul and reincarnation, and that our goal is to liberate our soul from the cycles of birth and death, to become Siddha. Once you become Siddha, your soul will not be migrating and wandering around in the world. Let us begin by understanding where we all are and where we should be going. Male householders are called Shravaks, female Shravikas. These are all of us. Then there are 5 supreme beings over us who are called Panch Parmesti, that Shravaks and Shravikas bow down to, who help destroy all of our sins. Ultimately, we want to be sinless. Even good karmas keep us attached in life. So we should not have neither good karmas nor bad karmas. We should be karma-less. First, I bow to all ascetics, which are sadhus and sadhvis, who strictly follow the great 5 vows of conduct, which are total non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, celibacy, and non-possessiveness, and inspire us to live simple life. They have voluntarily given up social, economical, and family relationships. Second, I bow to ascetic teachers, Upadhyayas, who explain the true nature of the importance of the spiritual life over the material life. They teach scriptures to sadhus and sadhvis. Third, I bow to the head of the religious congregation called Acharyas that I mentioned, who follow the path of liberation. preach the principles of religion, and inspire us to control our desires and to live moral and spiritual life. Fourth, I bow to all liberated souls called Siddhas, who have attained the state of perfection and immortality by following the path of liberation and achieving freedom of all karmas. They have reached the ultimate highest state called salvation. This state of true freedom is called moksha, nirvana, siddha. That's all very similar. You want to arrive there. And finally, I bow to all enlightened beings. We call them arihants. Ari meaning enemies and hanta meaning destroyer. Therefore, arihant means a destroyer of the enemies. And these enemies are not people like you and me or any animal or plant. These enemies are inner desires of or passions. They include anger, ego, deception, and greed. When a person or a soul wins over these inner enemies, he or she is called Arihant. Arihants have attained perfect knowledge, wisdom, bliss, and power, and have shown the proper path of liberation, that is, right knowledge, right perception, and right conduct, which brings the cycles of birth, death, and misery to an end. Aryans are divided into two categories. One group are called Tirthankars, which is what Lord Maharaj Swami is 24. There are 23 before that, and ordinary. Tirthankars are special because they revitalize the Jain sun, consisting of sadhus, sadhis, shravak, and shravikas. And during every half-time cycle, which is thousands of years, 24 persons like us rise to the level of Tirthankars. And the first of our time period was Lord Rishabdev, and the 24th Lord Mahavir. After establishing Jains, Aryans attain salvation, and then they are called Siddhas. So this is the main prayer that we do anytime, every time, whenever a person is in a good time as well as in bad time. We start with some of the good functions, also with the recital of Nokar Mantra. So that is one, and I have one other. Shall I carry on?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. This is specific for how do you or what do you preach during pandemic?
Okay, great.
Now it is
a great way to end. Absolutely.
It has been around, but this is much more applicable in the present circumstances. And again, I will recite and then give the meaning. Upasarga samyanti sigyante vignavalaya mana prasanna sameti pujyamane jinesvare sarvamangala mangalyam sarvakalyana karanam pradhanam sarvadharmanam jainam jeti sashanam. And the meaning here is, by worshipping Lord Arihants, all the obstacles, which is the upsarga, physical, mental, and emotional, are dissolved. Challenges are resolved, and all the joyful, and all be joyful. Let followers of Jain and all other religions lead the way for happiness and bliss for all.
I couldn't ask for a more perfect ending to this session. Thank you so much, Dr. Shah. This has been such a treat for all of us. We really appreciate your time and the wisdom that you shared. And you as a human being, as a man of service, we thank you for that. And I really look forward to, and we'll take this offline between you and I, but I would love for the Jain community and the Interfaith Council, to strengthen our relationship and to engage with one another. I think that would be tremendously beneficial to everyone. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, I will like to recognize and mention Mr. Mahesh Vadar, who is the current president of Jaina, and he resides in Corona, and I'm sure he'll be interested in joining us whenever we get to this. And I'll tell you one other creative thing that we have done during pandemic.
Okay.
This is a bit personal, but I think I'd like to share.
Okay.
We were planning to go to Ghana, Africa for a mission in October. And under the circumstances, I realized that we will not be. And that this mission is for medical, surgical, dental, and eye care. And in the year 2020, my personal goal is to do 2020 cataract surgeries and around the world. And we were last year in Ghana, and 2 months ago, I called him. I said, look, I don't think I would want to risk traveling. So can you put a team together to do it? And, so my new motto in life is to do missions remotely. I will be sitting in La Mirada, and yet things will happen. He actually has promised me that he will arrange 3 hospitals to do 2020 cataracts between September and December of this year. And I promised him we will raise money to get you all the supplies and things. And it is working out very beautifully. We need to raise total $20 per cataract. That's really a very good. And I got half of the money out of 40,400 donated by 3 families.
Wow.
So $2 will match, and we need to raise other half. And we are probably past 11,000 in that. So we just need a few more thousand. And I have commitment from a family who will match whatever is missing.
Oh,
So
that's fantastic.
this is a product of creativity during the pandemic that I personally have endeavored into under Anikan Community Center.
No doubt inspired by your faith tradition. Thank you so much, Dr. Shah. I look forward to us engaging more offline. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us again for this program. All of our programs are on our YouTube channel, so please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, and you can have access to, there's a plethora of programs that are there that you can have access to. We are a nonprofit, so if you're able to, we would love for you to support our work by making a donation online at scinterfaith.org. Until next time, thank you all so much. Be safe, and I hope that you too find the silver lining in your faith amidst this pandemic. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.